Hi, it's Torsten Lange, founder and director of the Reiki Academy in London, Hay House author for Reiki, and today I would like to share a very personal story. Just over a year ago, my dad passed away. And it's probably a bit odd sharing such story when it's all about healing and help. And then you talk about somebody who didn't make it, although he got a lot of Reiki. Well, Reiki doesn't make us immortal. We still die. And yet, and that's the weird thing, in a way, it does make us immortal because it helps us realize that death is not the end. When Dad died, he had prostate cancer, and for a year or so he was really struggling, and I think he had 7 or 8 times surgery during the year. It had spread into the bones. It was so difficult, and he got so much Reiki, and every time he recovered very quickly after surgery, and yet the cancer continued to spread. So it was obvious that his time was coming to an end. And for me, that was a very, very difficult thing to accept. I wanted to spend so much more time with him. And I did everything I possibly could, from sending Reiki to sending him to one specialist to the next. But it just couldn't be stopped. And I remember that one evening I was sitting there thinking, so what can I do? And I suddenly realized, well, why do I want him here? For me. It was a completely egotistical idea. I wanted to keep Dad with me. I wanted to have him longer. And once I realized that, I accepted that it wasn't about me at all. It was really about him. And maybe it was his time to go. And maybe it was even my task to make it easier for him. It was a moment when I let go and when I accepted whatever's right for him, whatever's meant, I accept. And a few months later, he really deteriorated, and he had stayed at home all the time, but for the last week or so, he couldn't anymore. So he went to a hospice, and I visited him every day. He didn't recognize me anymore, but I did, when I gave him Reiki, feel a connection with him, and that was very beautiful. And one day, his wife, my stepmother, and I arrived late in the morning. There was a very strange atmosphere. We opened the door, and suddenly I kind of noticed lights. I noticed it was on the right-hand side. I remember that so vividly, and I felt there was a lot of light, like a lightful presence. And I thought, wow, this is probably it. This is probably the day. The light has arrived. Something has arrived. And we sat down and we held Dad's hands. And while I was there, I felt this presence, and I could kind of sense individual beings. I couldn't see any faces, but I sensed definitely a presence. And the shallower Dad's breathing got, and the more he struggled, the closer I felt it was coming. It was really moving closer and closer. At some stage, I saw lots of light around the foot end of his bed. And then about an hour or so later, I sensed what could probably best be described as like a hand, something like lifting up and moving towards Dad. And I thought that's probably a hand stretched out. They were, well, there to take him, to welcome him. And I think 2-3 seconds later, Dad took his last breath. What then followed was so weird. It's really difficult to describe. I felt so much joy around me. And I had the feeling as if people were hugging each other, and Dad was really welcome there. And I was sitting thinking, so who's looking after me? Who is caring for me? I am the son who's been left behind. I've just lost my dad. But it wasn't about that. I realized that Dad was home. And I don't think I would have ever been able to sense this, to witness this in such clarity without my opening through Reiki, without this connection to higher vibrations in the universe, where this is just reality. We do not die. We simply move from one state into another. Life has a beginning and an end. But what Reiki connects us to is the realization there is something deeper that is just there. It's eternal. For me, sensing Reiki in my hands is like proof of eternity in our hands. And this is why I practice Reiki. It's wonderful to get healing. It's incredible to get help. But life always ends. Then again, it doesn't. And this is why I so love Reiki. It helps me to live in this awareness. There is a deeper reality. I'm part of it. Everyone is part of it. No one gets lost. All separation, all end is just an illusion, really. It is a temporary experience, and beyond this life, there is reality.